So this is the external door that I've made. Just knocked it up for the outside of the new coop entrance, which will be within the frame that I've built. And I just thought I would colour it a different colour so that it stood out against the shed wall. And then after I've got this painted and dried, I can fit it onto the shed at the appropriate place so that the chickens can enter the run from inside the shed. And on the other side of this entrance I've got an automatic door opener, and that will attach to the inside of the shed, and a small bridge into the back of the coop, and then that way the birds inside the shed can access the run at the appropriate time of day every day. So I'm approaching that time when I'm going to forge a hole through the back of the shed and into the run for the chickens, and I'm going to use this chicken guard automatic door. I've built this frame for the actual fitting to connect to, so that it's ready and got rigidity. And this is an automatic locking chicken guard door, so the weight of the pulley pulling up the string pulls the door up, and as it goes down under the weight of the door it locks, and the locking mechanism means that in the end nothing can get through from the outside. So it's a great invention. Not running perfectly at the moment, and will take some fine adjustments I'm sure, but that's what's got to be fitted. And then on the outside of the run, on the back of the shed, is this door that I fashioned. I've stained it, and this is how it actually goes together, with the chicken guard door on the inside and the outside door frame on the back of the shed. And I will have to find exactly the same position on both sides to try and fit this so that when you open the door you've got a perfectly aligned hole. So that's the challenge. The chickens inside of the shed are going to be in the rabbit hutch, and the rabbit hutch is a couple of inches off the ground, so I need to make sure that I don't start this doorway until I get to that level. That way the chickens will walk out of the back of the rabbit hutch and out of the door. So it's important that I get that level the same, and then I will need to have some sort of small bridge that goes from the outside into the rabbit hutch, and all that's to come later. The first thing is getting this in the right place. From the outside I've got some considerations to make. I want to keep this blackcurrant bush inside the run, and therefore it's not really practical to come out centrally. So I'm going to come out offset and have the doorway from the back of the hutch as far left as I can go. So it's about getting all those measurements right before I strike a hole through the shed. So I've measured up, got the door opening into the position that I want it, and then I've put the frame against the back wall and just popped 4 screws through the wall. And that's going to help me a great deal, because that's the area I need to cut out. It's also the area from the outside that I need to put the frame on the doorway. So I'm going to go outside now and just see how that looks in terms of where it comes out in the run, if it avoids the blackcurrant bush, and if what height it is really off of the ground. So there we are. It comes out just about in front of the bush. So my best laid plans, I need to not go any further over to the right, because that would come outside the boundary of the hutch. So I'm locked into having it in that position, and I'll probably just have to have a stepping ladder up to it, and looking at it, I'll probably be able to avoid the bush without too much problem. So the frame that I'm going to put on should, in theory, fit just about right on there, and will look something like that. As the frame rested up against the hole, it's good enough, I think. If any of you are wondering why this slopes away from it, well, the shed's on a lean, so that is actually square, and just need to go and see what the outside looks like now. Bit of a moment of truth, and it's a fairly neat hole. I'm quite pleased with that, and comes out in a reasonably good place, as we've already seen. So the best way to fix these two frames is to sandwich the shed in between them. So my plan is to screw through one and into the other, and to do that I'm going to need my drill, which I don't have with me, but I'm going to put one tack through there and see if I can just hold it in place for now. So I'm reasonably happy with that, and then I can put a few drilled holes into the two upright frames and the lower frame, and then screw through into the frame the other side, and then that should give me a really firm sandwiched fitting. The unit that pulls the door up and down needs to sit directly over it, and I need to take into consideration the height of the hutch. It's a double height rabbit hutch, which is what we use as a coop for the chickens. So I need to be above that height, and then the motor and the electronic unit that pulls the door up and down needs to sit above that. So I'm figuring along this beam here is about where I need to put this fitting. So I'm going to put a cross beam in, and I'll mount the fitting above it, working on the basis that it will pull up the pulley from above it. Well, good morning everybody. I thought I'd give you an early morning tour this morning. It's a cold day, but it's really nice and dry, which is the main thing. And it's March, it's the end of March, and it's time therefore for the end of March allotment tour. So I think we'll start off in this rather rough and shoddy area. There's lots of work to do here. This of course is where I have been getting these summer fruiting raspberries ready for the summer, and there's lots of weeding and there's lots of leveling to do here. I've done a little bit, but there's lots more to do. This great stuff is wood chip from a tree from a neighbour who's taken down that tree in just the last few days, and I'm going to be using that in due course. So still lots of rubbish on the floor here which I need to clear up. I did want to show you these bluebells, which are really getting on now and hopefully will be flowering in the not too distant future. It's great to see. I think I might put more wildflowers in here if I can. So the fruit garden has been where most of my effort has been over the last few weeks, and you watch my early video earlier this week, you'll see that I completed this area, which is gooseberries and rhubarb, and you can follow on the techniques that I used to get to this point. But I'm really pleased with it. It's always aimed to be a maintenance free area, and that's what it's going to be. And I think we can hopefully in the future get good access to all the fruit, predicting that these bushes will grow about 1 meter high and 1 meter wide, and I'll obviously have to keep on top of them as they develop. I've done additionally 3 more patches here ready to put additional fruit plants in. I'm just weighing up which of the plants that I've got left I want to put in there. I've got rhubarb, I've got some black currants and a few more gooseberries, and just need to work out what to put in them. I think the one down the end is likely not to have anything put in it, mainly because I don't want to dig down and damage the roots of that pear tree, which is just coming on beautifully now. All the buds are starting to burst and we'll soon see leaves. The apples I'm going to tell you more about in due course, but I'm starting to see buds on them, which is great news. This path, which runs down the middle, is going to be the last thing I do. All my effort at the moment is going into making sure that I get things into the ground, and as this is going to be a path, there's little or no point in spending a lot of effort on that when I've got other areas that I need to work. So the strawberries, I'm getting very close to adding more strawberries to the polytunnel. These are the early patches of soil that I dug, and I've had to go back and re-dig them because of these dock leaves, which seem to grow so easily, but the next layer of weeding has got them out, and I've got a couple more patches that I've done here, one in there, and this one I've just started. Again, it's all about getting things into the ground. So not an awful lot to do here now. I've dug a little bit more here earlier on in the year, so I've just got to work around this patch, and hopefully can get to the position where I'm pretty much weeded. I'm taking out all the couch grass, all the mare's tail, all the dock leaves, and then I will cover it with a membrane in the same way as I've done at the top, because this is all about maintenance free fruit gardening. Clearly I've got to dig along that patch and this patch down here, so there's lots more work to do, but it's coming on. I've broken the back of it and I can see my way forward. This area is pretty much in hibernation. This is where I will be growing summer squash and squash for the autumn, and everything's been prepared here. The beds have had the mulch on and they're just waiting. All the stones just keeping the membrane on. I've re-wood chipped these paths so that we keep the weeds down, and I've got this row of strawberries and Jerusalem artichokes, and these are going to need some attention very quickly. They look very dry. I'm even wondering whether some of those plants have died, but I will take the best of those, and I've got no end of strawberries to repot if I need them. I've got some cardboard down there, and I'm going to use that cardboard underneath the path when I get to create it. Over here you'll remember that I did a lot of pruning, and I put the pruning onto this plot, and then I needed to move all that pruning, and I've put it into these bags because this plot's been taken over. And fabulous to see the progress this person has had, and a big shout out to Ali, who's the daughter of the gentleman who does this plot, and I know that she's a big fan of the channel, so well done, Ali. I'm going to take you up into the allotment to see these wonderful blossoms that are starting to cover the trees. Absolutely amazing. And you can see another one here. This is a cherry, and they really are beautiful. These are raspberries, communal raspberries really. Everybody can help themselves, and you can see my plot from a distance. The sun just starting to hit the mountains on the other side, and we've got one or two of those amazing clouds developing today. So on and down into the plot, and I'll take you first over to the chicken area and show you what's going on. And the reality is nothing's going on, because the chickens are in the back garden. And you know, in these difficult times, we made the choice to bring the chickens back to the garden for protection, and that's going to give us an opportunity just to do some maintenance in here. I've got some various bits and bobs to get done, and gives us that moment when we can do maintenance that the chickens wouldn't like. The compost area is pretty much sedentary at the moment. My compost provider is at the moment having to stop providing me with horse manure, understandably. These are some of the strawberries that I've got that are spare, and we'll be able to dig those out. These are all new runners last year that I've potted into these trays, and we'll be using those as fresh stock for this year. So I've got a few extra bushes down here that I need to work out whether I'm going to use and how I can use. We've got some loganberry. This is an autumn raspberry called Autumn Bliss, and this is a red currant bush that I moved and potted up. And the area that is at the bottom of the plot that always suffers from lots and lots of water, I continue to bring anything that I am discarding from the main plot down here, bringing up the level, and at some point I'll get to level this out and hopefully solve some of the water problems. The potato area is dormant at the moment. I've got a couple of bins or pots of potatoes which we'll be taking out in the next day or two. And this is the area that I pruned all the black currants, and everything is shooting really nicely. These black currants, all leaves bursting out, and that's great to see. Nothing on the apples yet in the way of leaves, but early, but it's ready. This is the, I'd like to say it's a boysenberry, or it's some sort of berry. It's never fruited, so I don't know, but I keep pruning it and trying to control it, because those runners come out 6, even 8 feet, and they just get unruly. So I keep controlling it, but I'm yet to see it fruit, and I don't absolutely know what it is. So if anybody does know, just pop it into the comments. When I pruned all this area, if you go back to my earlier videos, you'll see what a huge mass and tangle of blackberry and all sorts of weed. It's now pruned back, but it did expose this gooseberry, which is now looking fabulous, and I think the extra light that it'll get hopefully will mean that it will fruit. I just need to keep on top of this area now, because there's no doubt about it, it will fill with stinging nettles if I allow it to, and so I'm going to keep pulling those out. Up here at the back, these joss debris which I put in early last year are really well established now. They're nice shaped bushes. I'm going to try and keep on top of the shape of them, because they do get a significant size, and hopefully this year we'll see some fruit. We didn't see more than the odd berry last year. And of course the new chicken run, which at the moment is not in use for the reasons that I said earlier, but I've got the base in, I've got the frame in, I've got the door in, and yesterday I worked on the entrance exit, and I'll hopefully be showing you that later. This bed failed last year because it got very dry, and you can see that the rhubarb that I thought actually died is in fact coming through once again, which is fabulous to see. And the onus is on me to make sure that I keep it well watered, because this bed obviously does dry out quite easily. So I'm trying to keep on top of that, and hopefully this rhubarb variety, which is a later variety, will bear some nice long edible stems. So this mound that I use for courgettes is dormant, much like the squash area, and again it's been fully mulched and covered back over, and I'm just waiting for the weather to warm up. Still get these sycamore seeds growing, and we'll keep on top of those. This is a large gooseberry bush that I've never had fruit from. I've opened it up a little bit more. It probably needs a bit more pruning. It's a very difficult bush because these spines are just lethal. But who knows, might get some fruit on it. The compost bins then, they've had many a trailer of horse manure added to them. Each of these was filled up and has rotted down, and has been filled up and has rotted down, and again you can see they're getting near to 50% full, following the last turning that I did with them. But that's great, there's lots of compost in there, and that's what's going to serve me well for the coming autumn. Try to keep the camera from pointing into the sun so that you get a clear view. These red currants I pruned hard, and I can see buds on them, but they're quite slow in bursting with leaf, but they're certainly making progress. And this one's different. This is a red currant bush, but is actually much further on, and I know that it's in a stream of water that comes down here during the winter, whether that's helping it, or whether in fact it's because I pruned this bush much harder last year, and this year it's having a bit of a spurt and it's coming on nicely. But all these red currant bushes are doing well, and hopefully we'll have a good season with them. Holly tree, I'm starting to think it might need some shaping this summer, but it's looking okay. We're gradually getting that round form that I'm trying to look for. It's been quite a long journey to get the shape on that tree. So let's go and have a look at this bank over here. And I know this isn't an area that I cultivate, but we've got another gooseberry in here, a really old one. Looks like we've got a bramble coming out through the hedge there, which I probably need to remove. But look at that lovely show of celandines which are growing on the bank, and I'll certainly leave those there because they look so attractive. The main beds then are still dormant. The garlic is coming on really nicely. There's 3 varieties in there, and I think perhaps I've got them a little bit close together. That's the over enthusiasm for planting everything that you have. Maybe I should have just given it a bit more space, but they're coming on nicely. and this area was where I had parsnips, and I've got a few parsnips just trying to grow back through where I've clearly not picked out the roots, so maybe I'll hook those out and they'll make a bit of a feed one day. The other beds are covered and just waiting for the warmer weather and for me to plant. We've got a few of the Russian kale left and we're still eating that. So everything poised and ready to go. I've done these wood chip paths again, as you'll see in an earlier video, and I'm happy that it's all now about waiting for the planting time. The second of my main beds, I've got a few sprouts which I'm pulling out and we've been feeding to the chickens. There's a bit of kale and a few celeriac which we will eat up. A few cabbage left over from the summer. They look like they're just about to bolt and go to seed, and we'll probably eat those shortly. We've got some strawberries that I still need to take out from last year. This wasn't a successful way of growing them. Too much damage to the fruit from birds and slugs. Just one solitary Swede left. We'll be having him soon. He's taken a bit of a bashing from slugs, but there's still plenty of flesh on there to eat. These are some of the rhubarb that I need to site up into the fruit garden, and this bed's sitting dormant, as is this one, and this one is now empty, having had the last of the red cabbage out of there. Over the back here we've still got kale and cabbage that's feeding us. Plenty of new growth on these, and just stacks of new growth on this 1,000 head cow. These two beds dormant, waiting to be planted up, and this is where I had the garlic, and we've got these few clumps of garlic which were obviously bulbs that stayed in, and I'm just going to leave those. I think I'm going to do sprouts in there this year. And this little rose that's coming on nicely, it's a climber, it's been in there years. I've just opened it up a bit and hopefully it'll start to fill that hedge. So the cold frame's coming in really useful now. I'm just going to take out the fleece, which I've had in last night because we had yet another frost. We're getting a frost nearly every day at the moment, and you can see in there that everything's doing well. I'll just keep it reasonably warm over the next few days when we know we're going to have some cold nights. Come back for that fleece in a moment. We've got all that spent compost which I'll be using shortly for carrots. This area probably not going to get to this year. I'd like to cut this path in so that the grass doesn't grow over all of those beds, but there's so much groundwork to do over there at the moment that this is low down on my priority list. You'll see in one of my earlier videos I found these bushes on the verge. One of our YouTube channel viewers informed me that this was a climbing hydrangea. I'm really hoping that it is, because they're beautiful, and they're certainly shooting now and look to be reasonably happy in that location. So this spare soil down here, which I brought up from when I did the chicken run, that's going to help me fill the bed in the polytunnel that I've built recently. So let's have a look into the polytunnel. And there's a lot more soil that I've added in here in the last day or two, which came out of the holes that I made for all the fruit. And as I dug it out, it had previously been weeded, so I knew that it was good soil, and I brought it straight in here. So I'm waiting for a rainy day when I can do not a lot else, and I'll be digging into this really hard soil that was under the membrane before I opened this big bed up. And so there's a lot of work to do in here, and I guess I'm under pressure of time because I know that I'm going to be using it pretty soon, but I think I've got sufficient time to get that job done. The seedlings, I'll keep them tucked up for now because it's still very cold, but they're all coming on well, and I'm really pleased with how everything has germinated, and celeriac, which was my concern, seems to have done really well. I've got 2 trays of it now coming on nicely. Bit disappointed with the swede at the moment, so I think I'm going to be sowing another tray of seed. Over here, this is where these sides came out from the old bed, and I've stacked them up into a tower. I've got this one to do exactly the same with, and then this will be about, I don't know, 18 inches high, and I'm going to use this for carrots inside the polytunnel. So I've got to have that parsley out. Mrs. K's got to take our wintered over plants out and pot them up and put them back in the garden, and then this soil's going to go into here, and I will cover this over with more membrane, and then all of this area is going to be used for tomatoes, aubergines, peppers in pots. And the strawberries are doing really well now. I'll be hanging those soon and putting in my next succession planting of strawberries, ready to grow them in the polytunnel, where we get fantastic fruit and no slug damage, no fruit damage, and so that's a really successful way of growing strawberries. So the polytunnel, again, a lot to do but enjoyable, and just waiting for one of those rainy days when I'm a bit restricted. I re-wood chipped all round the polytunnel earlier on in the year. Some nice celandines down there, but it's made this area so much more accessible, and I'll be able to get around the polytunnel when I need to get the hose and those sort of things. Accessibility is really important. So the sun's coming up nicely now, and today it's going to be a bright day. Hopefully it'll stay nice and dry, and we'll get more done today. So I hope you've enjoyed a March tour of the plot. There's a few days left in March. British summertime starts tomorrow, and then we're into April, and we've still got lots of cold weather, but hopefully we'll still get lots done. And for anybody who's interested, the podcast Digging the Dirt is on again this Sunday, or at least the radio broadcast is on this Sunday, and then it gets added to a podcast that you can download on iTunes. So Digging the Dirt with Russ and Jake is a podcast all about allotments, and for the second month in a row they asked me if I would do an interview with them, and that's what I did. So if you want to catch up with the fun session we had, then either tune in to Skywave Radio on the internet, or wait for the podcast to be uploaded on iTunes and other podcast platforms. So thank you very much, and I'll see you later. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.